to foundation level giving, such as my organization, Rockefeller Gates. How do we get to those dollars? Because they're funding research in the university systems, right? So what can we do in order to facilitate maybe making some of those relationships happen? And I think I'm coming with nothing but offers, right? Our organization has a lot of contacts with industries and foundations. We often think about how we can align our strategies with theirs. So there's just a lot of skill set that I've developed over the last 7 years and really looking at priorities and kind of identifying potential partnerships. So I'd love to just listen and leave my information, and if anyone has any ideas or wants connections with other foundations or industry partners we work a lot with. We funded with over 550 partners throughout. So we work with McDonald's, we work with John Deere, we work with Gates, Rockefeller, the list goes on and on. And so how do I capitalize and leverage the relationships I've built and bring that support back to the 1890 system, which is very much my priority, right? Quiet is kept, right? So I'm very much always looking for opportunities. So one of the things that we were able to do that I was quite excited about is partner with Cliff Bar. So they endowed Tuskegee with $1 million to work in organic research. Our organization was able to match that $1 million to make it a $2 million pot, right? That's how our organization works. We find non-federal dollars and we provide match. And so as we're thinking about opportunities, research that you're aligning, it'd be great to have opportunities. I'll be here all week, and so if there's some time, if you want to just pull me to the side and talk about opportunities, I'd love to have those conversations, because I think the thing I want to most impart is that the 1890 system, Ron was very correct, it's near and dear to my heart, but I think there's so much richness and power, there's so much opportunity here, and I feel like we leave dollars on the table, and I'm not a fan of that, right? I feel like there's funding. I constantly hear conversations around how can we support BIPOC farmers, how can we support Black farmers, how can we build communities, and 1890s are experts at that. So how do we just leverage those skill sets into this space where historically perhaps y'all don't, some of you have relationships and some of you don't. Well, that's not a hard thing we can fix, right? People like me can be a bridge for some of that work, right? You've got the research, you've got the talent, the insight. All I can provide is an introduction, but I can do that, right? And so thinking about ways to use me, right? I'm here for you to do that, right? We have so many opportunities for early career researchers, for example. We rarely get any applicants from 1890s. We have found opportunities that don't require a match, but we don't get a lot of applications. And I know that part of that is just workload, right? But how can we facilitate, or how do I connect with your early career researchers or your students that perhaps want to apply to some of these fellowships, and just connect them and give them that information? So Dean Hill has my information, Raymond, I'll leave it, but please don't hesitate to just, I guess, think about ways in which I can be of value and of service to the 1890s, to the Centers of Excellence. I think that's all I'm coming with, is no ask, just offer. And so, and I don't have any issue, Raymond knows I'll talk to anybody as long as you want to about kind of the ideas that you have, but I'd love to just figure out ways in which I can make those connections that can bring additional resources to the amazing work that y'all are doing. So that's all that I'm here to do, is just listen, learn, and then if there are any opportunities, definitely align those. So I'm happy to continue to work with y'all as you're designing your strategies, as you're thinking about potential funding opportunities. But the spaces that I sit on, there's often industry and nonprofit interest in engaging with 1890. So how do we make that happen? So that's all I'm here to do. So I'm hoping that there's some opportunities that we can find to think through what that might look like. Anything else, Dean?
Oh yeah, I know this was going to have some questions.
Yes, absolutely.
What size
funding?
Grant funding do you deal with? So this is another level. So they can have a sense of opportunity here.
Yeah, so within our foundation, we have a wide range of funding opportunities, but I would say that they go from $300,000 to $1 million is one of our competitive opportunities. And then some of our consortia, which I think the Centers of Excellence might be right for, are somewhere around 10, 15 million, sometimes 20, depending on the additional partners we can bring into the table. I think that a lot of the areas that you've outlined are very relevant. Dr. Mortley and I had the pleasure of being in each other's company in Chicago, and there was still, again, industry interest and opportunity that I think we don't think about, because a lot of these groups, we work with some foundations that they never want to be named, but they are funding in agriculture. And so how do we access that resource as well? So I would say that typically we fund between $5 to $10 million larger collaborative projects. We do have competitive opportunities that are smaller, and then not just FAR, but thinking about like what do the Rockefellers do, the Kellogg's, the Gates, the other foundations that are working in this space, and how do we access those dollars? I think there's a very specific way you package that information, but we have development members that help us, and if we can come up with an idea that makes sense to our organization, we can definitely work with you to connect those and build that out. So,
Anybody have any?
yes,
Want
sir.
to funding be collaborative in nature, 1, and 2, matching.
Yes, so funding collaborative in nature, absolutely. The matching, that's where I think we can bring in other foundations or other industry partners such that the match does not have to come from this group. So typically that's what we try to do, is we try to identify other industry partners that have a vested interest, or foundations or other NGOs that might have a vested interest. So for your reference, every dollar that we spend, we must match with non-federal, but that could be 50% cash and 50% in kind. In kind is never the issue. It's always the cash match. But I think that if we can identify some other funding partners that have interest, that match doesn't necessarily have to come from the members of the collaborative. It can come from other partners that are interested.
Thank you.
Anybody else? And I'm here for several days, so if you can't think of anything now, you can always grab it later.
What areas do they fund the more?
So within our foundation, we have what we call challenge areas. So we fund in soil health, sustainable water management, advanced animal systems, urban food systems, next generation crops, which is most of the breeding and things of that nature. And what's the last one? There's one more. Oh, climate. So when I was looking at the thrust, I felt like there was alignment over almost everything that you talked about. And our organization has, and I think a number of organizations we talked to have developed a priority around socioeconomic or rural prosperity. So I think I saw some really key alignments in the thrusts that you already have, and a lot of the areas that my foundation funds in, but not just mine, but the trends that I'm seeing across other funding organizations and what they're interested in supporting. Yes, sir.
Do any of your areas have a focus on food-animal relationships, either the owner, impacting climate, those type of things?
Yes, so definitely within our climate portfolio, and then also there's a strong interest now in supporting within our organization. We just did a research re-strategy of our research priorities. So it's sustainable production systems and vibrant agro-ecosystems, which I think could fit either of those, yes. But we definitely like to see alignment between our animal and our crop. So we fund a lot of, for example, grazing research, but looking at cover cropping or things like that. So we do like to see projects that are kind of multidisciplinary, which I feel like that's why the Centers of Excellence are perfect for this kind of coordination. I think some of the challenge our foundation has had historically in working with 1890s is the dollar asks are a bit smaller and targeted, right? So if we're a foundation that has a limited amount of funding, you want to cover multiple regions, you want to look at multiple systems, you want it to be multi-institutional, which again is why I think Centers of Excellence might be the perfect vehicle for trying to identify opportunities to work in this way and apply for some larger dollar amounts.
Thank you.
Is it research in nature without outreach flavor? What I mean by that is based on research and just an outreach flavor, to say that we are working with research and extension and working together. So my question is this: how much outreach should be involved?
How much outreach should be involved? So historically, our mission is such that we want to make sure that we always say we want to translate research so that it gets into the hands of farmers. So we recognize the key role that outreach and extension play in encouraging adoption. So specifically within my soil health portfolio, I'm really only focused on adoption because I feel like the research is awesome, but if we can't get it implemented, it's really hard to see the larger impacts. So I think they go hand in hand, and I think that often in the projects that we fund, you'll find that they have strong research. You'll see our portfolios across the board. We do some basic research, but most of what we do is in that translational space. And so it's moving it from the lab and getting it onto the field. And that's kind of the research that we tend to gravitate toward. So I think designing a project that has extension, outreach, and research collaboratively, I think would make it really successful for something in our portfolio. And I get the sense that in other foundations and other NGOs, they're interested in that collaboration as well. Anybody else? If not, I'm in the back, so you can grab it whenever.
Well, excuse me.
Oh, yes, sir.
Good morning. We'll go back to what Franklin said. A lot of times we have a research, we have some of the research.
Yeah.
And then once we do the research, it takes us a while really to do that research.
Yes.
If you're talking about getting it out, a lot of times, 3 or 4 years to get the research project over with, so you never get it out. Do you have anything to address that, situation like that?
I understand that. So typically we try to make our grants longer so we can go up to 5 years. And then I think that the question would be in how you design the project, right? So the question is there a way, because what I'm a fan of is actually linking multiple funding opportunities. So can we leverage something that like NIFA already funded, right? And then we maybe come in and support that next phase of it. So I think you're right. Like there is this really challenging space in funding and research where the funding is like 3 years, but you really need about 7 to 8 years to see that impact. So I'm curious about, are there some existing opportunities where we can potentially fund? I've had conversations with folks in NIFA, figuring out ways in which we could do that, because they understand the challenge as well. So are there some things that we could look at to say, you've already received funding from NIFA to do like objectives 1 through 3, and then looking at ways in which we can then fund that next transition period. And we've done that with some of our larger projects. All right. Anybody else? And if not, I'll be in the